This is High Agency, a show for owners of accounting and financial planning businesses who want more clarity, more courage, and a better life. If you've been avoiding the hard things in your business or in your life, you're possibly optimizing for comfort. And comfort can be expensive. Hi, I'm Sharon McClafferty. I use evidence and experience to help business owners create a better business and a better life years sooner than they thought possible. So let's get into it. A few years ago, before I started running, I used to watch these people run up a hill near my home, and they looked like springs, like they were it looked effortless. They had toned muscles, and up they went one of the steepest hills in Brisbane, sprinting. A few years later, I started running, and my goal was to be one of the spring people. And after running every day for the better part of a year, I became a spring person. In fact, I took over a few in my time and felt fit and fantastic. And I'm working with a personal trainer, and I decided to set some new goals around my fitness and my health. And that involved him changing or suggesting that I change my nutrition. So I changed my diet in accordance with these long-term goals. And after a couple of weeks, my run that I did every single day, 4.1 kilometers, it has 5 hills in it, I do it daily, became quite hard. And the top of the hills were excruciating. And I ceased being one of those spring people of my dreams because it was really hard. And when my personal trainer checked in on me, he said, how's it going? I told him it was horrible. So I'd lost fitness. I felt the hills were really hard. At the top of the hill, I was doubled over, trying to catch my breath. There was a day when I sat down because I couldn't stand up. And I said, I'm losing fitness. And he paused and said, well, wait a minute. What are you optimizing for? And I thought, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, if you're optimizing for hill sprints and to be the fastest up that hill and have energy at the top, and the top 20% feels easy and all feels effortless, then we've got this all wrong. Your nutrition's wrong. You need more fuel. Your strength training sessions are wrong if you're optimizing for the fastest, strongest hill sprints. But you told me you had these long-term health and body composition goals, in which case the hills should feel hard. They should feel hard every single day. And if they don't, that's actually evidence that you might be overfueling in this stage of the change that we were trying to do. And once he said that question, what are you optimizing for? I couldn't stop asking that of almost every situation I came across in business and in life, and just pausing at moments that felt hard or awkward or with some discomfort, because maybe that discomfort was in pursuit of a longer term greater goal, rather than feeling, oh, this is wrong and I need to act now to feel less, discomfort or less pain. So I started seeing it in business, my business, but also other people's businesses everywhere. So I'm going to give you a second story that is kind of a business story to highlight this question. What are you optimizing for? Let's imagine that Disneyland was optimizing for the greatest day of your life, like magic day for everyone who attended Disneyland. How many people do you think they would let into the park? If what they were optimizing for is everyone having the most magical day of their life, maybe they'd let in 1,000 people, and every family would have their own dedicated concierge to make sure that they had a wonderful day and they didn't wait anywhere and there were no queues. But of course, that is a completely unsustainable business model. Disneyland is optimizing for sustainable profits and a sustainable brand of magic and a wonderful time. And in order to achieve that balance, they have to let 50 to 60,000 people in a day and tolerate some of those people not having the best day of their life. In fact, some of them might have the worst day of their life in Disneyland. And that is a discomfort that they need to tolerate in order to optimize for long-term profit, sustainability, and brand. If they really were optimizing for everyone having a magic day, they wouldn't be allowed to let enough people in the park to make it sustainable. So it's actually a question you could apply to so many situations in business. And I'm going to tell you about a few of them in this episode. So let's think about pricing. So if you are pricing low, I would argue you're optimizing for potentially high conversion, but certainly pleasing everyone, being seen as affordable, and not having too many conversations about being more expensive than other people or compared to other competitors. So you're optimizing for people pleasing and not having too many pricing conversations or comparative pricing conversations. If you are pricing high, potentially you're optimizing for clients who value what you do. Maybe you're optimizing for profit margin or sustainability or quality work or a great team environment. So I'm going to give you an example that I have used on stage in the past that people always say they can never get out of their head. Imagine there are 5 potential clients. They're all buying the exact same service, but their willingness to pay for that service is very different. That is pretty standard. You line up 5 clients, their willingness to pay for a particular service will be different. So the first client is willing to pay $2,000, the second client $3,000, the third client $4,000, the fourth client $5,000, and the fifth client potential client is prepared to pay $6,000. So if you set your prices low, so let's say you set your price at $2,000, then that meets everyone's willingness to pay. 100% of clients say yes. Obviously, you'd have to get your pitch right, but based on that price, 100% of them are willing to pay that fee. So congratulations, you just signed up $10,000 worth of new revenue and you have 5 new clients to service. The other option, potentially if you're optimizing for margin, might be that you set your fees at $5,000, which means the first, second, and third potential clients are not willing to pay that fee for that bundle of services. So clients 4 and 5 say yes, congratulations, you have just signed up $10,000 worth of new revenue and 2 new clients. In other words, the same amount of revenue with 40% of the work. That sounds like a bit of a no-brainer. So why don't we set our prices for the people who value us the most? Let's just raise our prices. Well, the cost of setting your prices to just satisfy the top 40% of people who are willing to pay those fees is that pretty much 60% of the pitches that you make to clients, they will say some version of, that's too expensive, I can get it cheaper down the road, or they'll make up some excuse that's not pricing, but the underlying reason will be pricing. So you're actually hearing a lot of no's. And then you'll go to conferences and people will say, have conversion rates. I mean, it's basically 100%. Whenever I hear someone say, our conversion rate on potential clients is 100%, it is not the flex that it usually is, that it comes out sounding like. It is not a flex at all. If 100% of people are saying yes to you, your prices are too low. You are pricing to satisfy the people who value what you do the least. But once again, the cost, the daily cost of having 60% of potential ideal clients say no is uncomfortable, but it is in the service of a high margin, happy business that can afford to hire quality team members. So it's choose your hard is what I'm saying here. One of the biggest themes I noticed when I started asking this question in all sorts of situations were business owners who were optimizing almost certainly unconsciously for conflict avoidance. So let me give you a story about business owners who are optimizing for low conflict in their partner meetings, and consider the cost of that optimization over time. So this is a $20 million business, a multi-partner firm, and they were in their partner meeting, and one of my coaches was in the meeting. He had a spot later in the agenda. They were talking about long-term succession planning. And at the start of the meeting, they just went over the financials very quickly. Yep, revenue's $20 million, EBITDA is 20%. It's been like that for years. This business has been around many decades. That's just where this business kind of lands at a 20% EBITDA. And then they moved on to the next item, which was an event for their clients. And the coach said, you just discussed top line revenue and EBITDA across the entire business. But obviously there are 4 distinct divisions here that are producing very different contributions to the profit. So do you interrogate those numbers? And the partners all looked at each other and said, no, we never have at this meeting. We just sort of have always run at 20%. And if it dips much below that, then we think about how we bring it back. And he said, well, it's actually quite important that we review each division, given we're talking about succession planning, and the profit contribution of the people in this room is really different. So depending on when each of you would like to exit could have a catastrophic impact on the business. They all looked at each other a bit confused why this was so important, until the coach pulled up the numbers and said, okay, this division, led by you two, has produced 42% EBIT last financial year and has consistently been above 40% for as long as the data that I can see. This division is producing 18% EBITDA, and these 2 divisions are both below 5% EBITDA and have regularly slipped into loss-making divisions over the past 5 years and seem to be pretty stagnant at below 5%. Is that something that you interrogate at these meetings or discuss? The answer was no, because they are optimizing for happy, friendly partner meetings that don't involve having tough conversations. There are people sitting at that table who are taking dividends like everyone else and taking salaries like everyone else, who are not consistently or not at all producing profit for this business. And that had been going on beyond a decade. So the cost for optimizing for low conflict can be extreme. And when I explained this to a group of clients last year, I had someone come up to me at morning tea and he just said $1.8 million every year. I said, sorry, can I get some context around that number? And he said, that is the cost of not having hard conversations at our partner meeting. $1.8 million of profit every year. This is a 4-partner firm. They turn over about $7 million. I said, how have you come to that number? He showed me the exact workings. This is the result of not having the pricing conversations that we need to have. This is carrying team members that we all know need to go, but one partner won't hear of it, and just document it. And I thought, well, gosh, I think I'd have a few tough conversations for a $1.8 million annual benefit. So sorry to plant that seed, but optimizing for low conflict, particularly in partner meetings, can be way more costly than you might realize. Now, in SaaS businesses, or certainly established SaaS businesses, there is actually this rule or this KPI that they all track themselves to. So if you read any reports of listed SaaS businesses, I guarantee this rule will be in there, and it's called the rule of 40. And it is to essentially say that in any given period, we might optimize for different things. So a SaaS business might spend a lot of money in pursuit of organic growth. So we invest in marketing and all the things that go along with organic growth. And then another year, they might not invest in organic growth, but instead consolidate and try and pump some profit out of the business. So this is called the rule of 40. And that essentially is the growth percentage and the EBIT percentage must equal above 40. So it kind of normalizes to say, well, to compare ourselves with other SaaS businesses, we're going to use the rule of 40 rather than just EBITDA or just growth percentage, because in any given time, we can deliberately and actively choose to pursue a different goal. So, I mean, I actually think the rule of 40 works quite well across most businesses. And I look at it all the time to think about comparing my business year on year. Did we make the right calls? And rather than say, okay, our growth percentage was way higher this year, and why aren't we achieving that? Oh, well, we actually consolidated in terms of profit. So I actually like doing it comparing year on year in our own business as well. Another thing that people tell me that they want, and then I see their actions and I think there's not an alignment of what they're saying and their actions. And one of those is the owner who wants to get off the tools or be less involved in the day-to-day activity of the business. So it's short term, that can actually be pretty painful and it can be costly, but long term, it's brilliant for value of the business. So I've got some clients who have, their goal is to essentially not have their name on the org chart. Well, there's some ways that you can do that. We need to hire people, we need to train them, we need to hand off tasks. Sometimes the profit can dip, particularly if it's not a large business and we have to make a significant hire in order to get the owner off the tools. There'll be a period of time where the owner might feel useless. So I always ask people, like, let me know when you feel bored, because it's going to feel like a bad sign, but it's actually a great sign. The team's going to stretch to sort of fill that vacuum, and things might get wobbly for a bit. And so you can see all these like daily or weekly discomforts and costs, but in pursuit of a long-term benefit, not just to the human that probably has been running the firm for a long time, but also to the value of the business. So hard now, heaven later is kind of the idea with that optimization. Another, like, this is a small example that could have potentially large ramifications. We had a client recently who said, he was in a session with the coach and sort of quite proudly said, we've done a lot of work. So it's a financial planning business. We've done a lot of work on our annual review process and it's really efficient. And the coach said, efficient at what? And the client looked at him quite confused, not sure. He said, well, efficient at delivering an annual review, I guess. And the coach said, is it efficient at giving your clients a great experience? And the financial planner literally put his head in his hands and went, oh, no, we have optimized that entire process with a compliance lens. It is hyper efficient at ticking the boxes from a compliance standpoint. And we have barely considered client experience. And he actually said something that I thought was really interesting. He said, we were so proud of this process, but that is the kind of thing that in 3 years' time, when clients start to leave and you can't identify why they're leaving, it'll be this. It'll be because that process made them feel like a number in a factory. So they went back and his stated goal for the process, they went back and iterated and definitely kept some of the efficiency in terms of process improvement. But what they were optimizing for were clients who feel cared for, understood, delighted, and loyal. And so that was the primary objective that was very deliberately applied to this process, rather than we can efficiently roll out a client review. So there's lots of ways that you can kind of ask that question. What are we optimizing for? And just by asking the question, you're making it more deliberate. And I think he's right. I think in 3 years' time, they would have seen some client loss and they would have been completely stumped as to what was going on. So choose your hard. There is that saying, growth and comfort can't ride the same horse. If you optimize the daily comfort, the chances are you are not optimizing for growth or your potential. So it's that, I think there's, if your Instagram feeds anything like mine, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. You get to choose, but only if you deliberately think about it. The pain of clarity or the pain of confusion. So we do this a lot in business planning with our clients. Clarity can actually be quite confronting. A two-partner firm want really different things for their future. That often happens in business planning sessions. Not knowing that, though, you got confusion that destroys years of your life. And I see that all the time. They've got pain of raising prices or the pain of low margin. So one stings briefly and one suffocates slowly. The pain of letting someone go or the pain of carrying them for years. Short-term discomfort for long-term drag. The cool thing about owning a business is it's your choice. And often I see the choices being made as just indecision. We just let it drift. So the pain of deciding or the pain of delaying. I think indecision is a decision, but it often compounds downwards, right? So the lack of decision making I see in businesses that are slowly compounding downwards. The pain of exiting the wrong clients or the pain of servicing them forever. One awkward email or years of resentment. You get to choose. I think my favorite t-shirt slogan of all time, and if anyone knows how to produce t-shirts, I'm sure one of my team can get it for me. It says, well, if this isn't the consequences of my repeated decisions and actions, right? We're a walking story of our repeated decisions and actions. So the question I ask myself regularly, and the one I'm going to ask you today, what is something that you do or endure that feels hard, but it's actually at the cost of the outcome you want long term? I think anyone listening or watching that is a parent, you can probably come up with 20 ideas in terms of it with wearing your parent hat, something that short term feels really hard, but you know it's in the goal of a long term, highly functioning human. So it's just the idea that hard doesn't always mean wrong. And I have to tell you, when those hills were suddenly hard after 18 months of being this spring, it felt wrong. It felt like something I needed to fix and change. And it felt urgent to fix that. So you need to consciously know what you're optimizing for, because sometimes hard is just the price of the goal that you have chosen. If you can't think of anything in your life right now that is hard, or in your business that is regularly hard, I suspect you might be optimizing for comfort, not outcomes. So that in itself is a data point. What are you doing in business that is hard? Are you hearing people say, no, your prices are too high? Are you giving feedback to team that's hard? What are you doing regularly that you don't enjoy? It's okay, potentially. So given this episode is about what are we optimizing for, and it is also the first episode in this show called High Agency, I thought I might tell you what I'm optimizing for. So it's actually fun. If I'm enjoying creating this, I'll keep creating it. So my promise is absolutely that it will be useful and practical and relevant and evidence-based content, but not at the expense of fun. So if you're enjoying this or you want to hear more, hit follow or subscribe. Some upcoming episodes that are percolating, usually during my daily run: how to slow time down, the mathematics of modern dating, baseline happiness, the explosive results tied to simple commercial insights, the science of regret and how to use that as a compass. Then some things that I'm thinking about producing in the future. If you have any favorites from that list, please let me know. And thanks for listening. Choose your hard. Shape your future. You have more control than you think.